Detective Elias Thorne, a man who built his entire career on cold, hard logic, was facing the case of a lifetime. The kind of case that made a mockery of everything he believed in. He stood in the heart of the city's most secure museum, inside a vault that was, by all accounts, impenetrable, yet it was empty. The Azure Scepter, a masterpiece of antiquity, a relic rumored to hold the very essence of the ocean, was gone, vanished, poof. The security logs were pristine, not a single alarm had been triggered. The 6-ton titanium door hadn't been forced, its complex locking mechanism untouched. Surveillance footage showed nothing but an empty, silent room for the entire night. It was the perfect crime, a masterpiece of impossibility. Thorne ran a gloved hand over the velvet pedestal where the scepter once rested. It felt like he was chasing a phantom, a whisper in the dark. His only lead, if you could even call it that, came from a terrified janitor named Arthur. A man in his late 60s with eyes that had seen too much late-night weirdness. Arthur swore that around 3 a.m., as he was mopping the hallway outside the vault gallery, he saw it. A faint shimmer of blue light seeping from under the vault door. He described it as like moonlight on water, but alive. He dismissed it as his tired eyes playing tricks on him, but now he wasn't so sure. A shimmer of blue light, that was it. That was all Thorne had to go on. Thorne began where any good detective would, with the people. He started with the museum curator, Dr. Alistair Finch, a man as old and dusty as the artifacts he guarded. Finch was distraught, wringing his hands and speaking in hushed, panicked tones about insurance and reputation. But as Thorne pressed him, asking about the Scepter's history, a different kind of fear flickered in the old man's eyes. Finch became evasive, claiming the scepter was just a historical oddity, a bauble for kings. Thorne knew a lie when he heard one. Why would a simple bauble be kept in a vault that could withstand a direct missile strike? His gut told him the answer wasn't in the museum's blueprints or security protocols. It was in the history books. Not the official ones, but the dusty, forgotten tomes hidden away in the city's oldest libraries. Thorne spent days poring over ancient texts, deciphering obscure languages, and piecing together the myth of the Azure Scepter. The stories were wild, dismissed by modern historians as fairy tales. They spoke of the scepter not as an object, but as a key that could unlock doorways between worlds, bend the fabric of reality itself. It was said to have been forged by a forgotten civilization, beings who didn't walk on the earth but glided through the spaces in between. The legends all mentioned a guardian, a bloodline sworn to protect the scepter. Thorne cross-referenced genealogies, birth records, and property deeds, a thankless, maddening task. Finally, he found a name that kept appearing, a thread connecting centuries of silence. Finch, Dr. Alistair Finch, wasn't just a curator. He was the last in a long line of guardians. The man who had lied to his face was intimately tied to the Scepter's mystical past. Thorne confronted Finch again, this time not in his pristine office, but in the cluttered, book-filled study of his ancestral home. He laid out the ancient texts on Finch's mahogany desk. "Your family has been guarding this for 1,000 years, haven't they?" Thorne asked, his voice low. "This isn't about a theft. It's about a failure," Finch finally broke. He confessed that the Scepter's power was real. He explained that every few decades, on a specific celestial alignment, the barrier between our world and another grew thin. The scepter acted as an anchor, keeping that barrier stable. But someone, or something, wanted that door open? The thief hadn't stolen an object. They had stolen a lock. The shimmer of blue light the janitor saw. That was the scepter being activated, used to phase through the vault's solid walls. This wasn't a job for a cat burglar with fancy tools. Thorne was hunting someone who could literally walk through walls, someone who didn't play by the rules of physics. Finch gave Thorne his family's journals, filled with cryptic warnings and descriptions of the shadow walkers, beings from the other side who coveted the scepter. The journals spoke of a ritual, a specific location where the scepter could be used to tear open the veil completely. The ritual had to be performed at the next celestial alignment, which was tonight. The location was an abandoned observatory on the highest peak overlooking the city, a place where the sky felt close enough to touch. As Thorne raced towards the observatory, a storm was brewing, mirroring the chaos in his own mind. He, the man of logic, was now chasing a ghost to stop a supernatural ritual. When he arrived, the air was thick with an unnatural energy, a low hum that vibrated in his bones. Inside the observatory's main dome, he found her. She wasn't a monster or a shadow. She was a woman, draped in dark silks, her face pale in the moonlight streaming through the open dome. In her hands, the Azure Scepter pulsed with that same ethereal blue light, casting dancing shadows on the walls. She was ethereal, beautiful, and utterly terrifying. She was Evelyn, Dr. Finch's own research assistant, a woman Thorne had interviewed and dismissed as a grieving academic. "You can't stop this, detective," she said, her voice echoing with a strange resonance. "Some doors are meant to be opened." She explained that her ancestors were from the other side, trapped here centuries ago when the veil was last sealed. She wasn't stealing the scepter. She was reclaiming it. She was going home. Thorne knew he couldn't fight her with force. He had to use his own weapon, logic. He appealed not to her power, but to her humanity. "You don't know what will come through with you," he argued, his voice steady despite the howling wind. "You talk about going home, but what if you unleash a nightmare on the only home you've ever known?" She hesitated. For a split second, the unwavering certainty in her eyes wavered. That was Thorne's chance. He wasn't faster or stronger, but he was smarter. He didn't lunge for the scepter. He lunged for the observatory's ancient control panel. With a shower of sparks, he slammed his hand down, activating the massive gears that closed the dome's aperture. As the heavy steel plates began to slide shut, blocking out the aligned stars, the scepter's blue light flickered and died. The hum of energy ceased. Evelyn cried out, not in pain, but in loss, as her connection to the other world was severed. The scepter clattered to the floor, once again just a beautiful, inert object. The case was closed. The official report would be a work of fiction, citing a clever thief who exploited an unknown security flaw and was later apprehended. No one would ever know that Detective Elias Thorne had stood on the brink of another reality and saved the world with a well-timed punch to an old electrical panel. As he walked away from the observatory, leaving a weeping Evelyn and a silent scepter for Finch to secure, Thorne looked up at the stars. His world of logic and reason had been cracked wide open. He now knew that some mysteries couldn't be solved with fingerprints and forensics. Some crimes weren't just perfect, they were supernatural, and he, Elias Thorne, was the only detective in the city who knew the truth. He was no longer just a detective. He was a guardian, standing watch over the thin veil between our world and the shadows that lie beyond.